those greens? What's that?
No,
That looks different.
that's kale
Oh, okay.
or chard. That's chard.
Chard.
Like Swiss chard. It's like a tougher, like the texture is like a tougher lettuce, and you could either eat it raw or you could cook it or saute it a little.
Yeah.
You know, it's real hardy. So it's not as hardy as greens, but it's not as like light as lettuce.
Big one.
En
Bola
español,
de hilo.
volatilo.
Bola de hilo.
Es muy similar, pero
Sí.
no es el mismo medicina.
Hey, Abu Eddie.
Hi,
Good mo-
Mike. She speaks Spanish. She's giving me flowers. I
Yeah,
think.
he's a man of many talents.
Oh, yes. Really nice persona.
Oh, really? This-
Ardillas comen todo el tiempo. Vienen a comer.
Oh, qué bueno. Let's see.
Está bien.
¿Está bien?
Gracias.
No, de
Muchas
nada,
gracias.
de nada.
Que
Gracias
tengan
a
un
ti.
feliz día. Dios los bendiga.
Ah.
Sus pasos por donde caminen, por donde vayan. Y cada vez que se trompiecen se les convierte en flor. Y que pasen su día feliz.
Sí,
Porque es bonito, ¿verdad? Gracias a Dios que tenemos vida. I tell in Spanish something you know.
I heard beautiful day.
Yeah.
well, what do you think, y'all? Should we just...
Yeah, I
Go
think we
ahead
should
and
start.
Let's do some things. The feet is true.
Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
Question.
Okay. Maybe we could start with just a little grounding prayer. If you'd like to. I can also do it. It depends. Whatever you want. Creator, Great Spirit, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for this breath. Thank you so much for our 2 feet and the energy coming up from the earth. Thank you, ancestors, abuelas, abuelos, grandmother, grandfathers, uncles and aunties. Thank you so much for everything you've given us, all the guidance, and the prayer and the medicine of your lives. It sustained us and brought us into this beautiful moment. Thank you so much to the earth, to our mother, to Father Sky. Thank you for all the beautiful medicine of all the beings that have nurtured and sustained our lives. May we walk with clarity, grace, and joy today. May we honor the Creator. Thank you so much. Amen. Yeah, maybe we could start by just going around the circle. Maybe sharing just a little bit about how we're feeling. Your body, your spirit, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good right now. I'm glad this was I ran up on you guys accidentally. I thought I was sleeping in late and thought I had a meeting and it's next week. So I said I might as well stay out and go back and get to bed. It's too beautiful out here. So I'm glad I ran into you guys. Thank you.
I'm grateful because love is its own wisdom, and to have people who love the garden, and people who share their love for what they do and share love in general in this space makes the space sacred. Maybe we should take our shoes off like the Lord. Take out our shoes. This is holy
Okay.
ground.
Yes, indeed.
It's just damp.
Right.
Yeah, I'm feeling so grateful for the sunshine this morning. Just feeling the breath and having this time to be in the garden, on the land, and in this circle right now. Feeling a lot of gratitude. I'm feeling really chill today. this is a really nice little group. Yeah.
I'm feeling grateful for this class, for being outside. It feels like the last couple weeks we've been kind of like run down, with whatever cold or mild sickness is going around at school, and I work at home a lot, so I'm not outdoors often, and I just feel like I get healed every time I go outdoors and breathe fresh air. So I'm just really grateful to be here, and and to learn and have this opportunity.
Beautiful. Yeah, similarly to what everyone shared, I feel just like, it's so mysterious each day what brings us together, and this unique constellation is what Creator wanted to happen today, and for us to come together. And there's some medicine, even if it's really small, something that wants to emerge between us today. And I just love the mystery of that, and leaning into the mystery of our lives. And I'm feeling the peacefulness of that, and kind of just acceptance and settledness of that, and just feeling a lot of gratitude. Yeah, amen. Ashe, Omoteiro. I love all those words. Those affirmation words. I've been trying to learn. Well, anyway, that's a whole nother story. But we have such a small group that I think it really, and want to just, however people want to opt in or out of anything that we do today, but Abby and I, we have been working on a project. So I'm a student. I've been studying agroecology for the last 6 years.
Where?
At Berkeley.
Okay.
At UC Berkeley.
6 years I worked there.
Oh, where do you work?
In the Berkeley School of Education.
Oh, in the School of Education.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I'm a financial analyst person.
Oh, wow. Okay. School of Education, I've heard good things about the School of Education.
Yeah.
Some people really enjoyed their
I
time
enjoy
there.
my job.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I bring 6 years of sort of study and practice at the 2 student farms to the circle, and so I'm still a baby farmer. 6 years in farming as a baby farmer. You got to get 10, 15 seasons under your belt before anyone considers you a veteran farmer. And Abby and I have been working on projects, community projects as well, really trying to bring seeds and plants and medicine to people through just little workshops and projects like this one. So we're just I'm so honored to be able to do that with Abby. And so we brought all kinds of kind of different things that we could engage with if you're interested today. We brought a bunch of seeds from our seed library that we have, most of which we've saved ourselves. And one of the things we love to do is send people home with plant starts for your own garden. So we have everything you would need to either take seeds home or starts for yourself. And we can also do some starts for the garden, for the CFFJ garden, and direct seed some stuff. We brought cover crop seed, which is this beautiful mix of oats, barley, peas, fava beans, vetch. I also added a little bit of native seeds in here, some yarrow and a couple of other native plants. And this is so I guess the kind of theme for today, I kind of should take a step back. The theme that we were going for today was around seeds. So just a meditation on seeds. And of course, whenever we're talking in the garden or on the land, that means that we want to be honoring the particular season and the time that we're in. And so every time in the garden, at any season, there's always some medicine or some lesson to be learned from the seeds. And one of the seed lessons of this time of year is in the cover cropping. So diverse set of plants that we would grow, not to harvest, but to nourish the soil. So grasses, legumes, peas, beans, which through the sheer diversity of the plant species, but also through the nitrogen that the legumes fix in their root nodules, and also the grasses and their fibrous roots really benefits the soil. So this is one of the big seed lessons and aspects of time of kind of this season in the garden, and we can talk more about that. I'm just going to give like an overview of all the little pieces we have, and then we can kind of just have fun and do whatever calls to us. That's my thought right now. So we have that, and we have this straw, and so what we could do is cover crop a bed in the garden and for the restoration of the soil. And so maybe if Deacon Mike wanted to say, oh, well, we noticed this bed was having a lot of trouble, or things weren't growing so well, that might be a reason to cover crop that bed. Then we also brought some collard green starts that we thought we could plant if we wanted to. Those are just to kind of fill in the garden. We have, like I said, all of these beautiful wintertime seeds. So things like beets and chard and collard greens and cilantro, favas, lettuces, a whole bunch of different stuff. And then I also brought, these are all actually, another seed lesson, right, in this time of the year is seed saving. We're kind of just at the end of that time, but we're still in that period where seed saving is really critical. So you'll actually notice around the garden, there's a fair number of things that we could save seed from. So for example, the hyssop over there, the marigolds, and these actually came from a couple of the farms that I work at. A lot of these plants, they're ready for seed saving, and I just want to, invite folks to, one of the invitations is to really tune into the rhythm of seeds and incorporate seed saving into your practice, because it brings us into that full cycle where we're not just, where we're kind of letting these plants go to their full expression of their life cycle. So we could engage with this if people are interested in it. I could talk about how we save seed from all kinds of different plants, including fruits, like including things that you have in your kitchen. Everything from that to, these amaranths and quinoas and flowers, and there's a lot of different methods to saving seeds. And that's kind of a big thing to be done in the garden around this time of year. So that was kind of the three or four main activities that we had: seed saving, seed sowing, cover cropping, and then just general care of the garden. So, I don't know.
Where you're seed saving and then the cover cropping, just in the timeline.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Do you have anything that's calling to you right now?
I guess planting.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't planted
Great.
in a while. So
Well,
those guys over there look
These
good.
are calling to you. Great.
They want to go in.
Well, we can do both. What about you, Avi? Anything calling to you?
Planting and cover cropping.
Okay.
Things that I'm
Great.
thinking about.
Yeah, I'm really interested in cover cropping. It's not an area that I've really learned a lot about. I know the basics, but I know.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about it. Well, why don't we? What shall we do? I just keep turning it back to you all. We could break into small groups. I don't like to talk too much, so I feel like I've already said enough. So we can just learn by doing.
I am wondering, like, so when you have when you have your medicinal garden, how do you know when to harvest and how do you seed save on like the hyssop and stuff like that?
Great. So harvesting and seed saving are sometimes the same thing and sometimes not, depending on the crop. So for example, with a dry bean, like if we were going to grow black beans or pinto beans, that's what we have here. So we actually grew this milpa at the farm, where we grew, a milpa is any kind of intercropped corn system where you grow multiple plants together, and it's an indigenous technique. So giving thanks to the Lishan and Mwekmaloni and to all of our indigenous relatives who have just like pioneered or created these beautiful systems. So we grew these sunflowers, and then we had the beans run up the sunflowers. That's what you're looking at here, right? And these beans, so when the seeds, and most crops, when the seeds are ready, when the seed head or the plant has gotten really, really dry. Seeds are ready to harvest when the, so there's actually, okay, I gotta take a step back. So there's really two primary forms of seed saving. There's fruits, and then there's fruits, and then there's sort of more dry seed heads. And those are kind of the two primary ways. And then maybe finally there would be pods. So there's like dry seed heads, dried pods, and fruits. So with the two dry ones, you really want them to be nice and dry in order for the seed to be viable. So this is a good example of like this bean pod is really, really dry. And so it's like, okay, you can crack it open. And in this case, harvesting the food is the same as harvesting the seed, obviously, right? Because the beans are the food. So with the hyssop, for example, over here, like I'm looking for when these seed heads are nice and dry, and these are really dry actually. And so I would maybe come over here, harvest these, and then you can just, often with wind or insect pollinated things like this, you can just kind of lightly winnow them on like a tray or in your hand. And you see all those little black things?
Those are the seeds?
These are the seeds.
Wow.
So hyssop is and once you get into this stuff, there's so many different details, but this is in the mint family. I'm not totally sure. Maybe Abby could share. Do you know anything about like hyssop's medicinal qualities?
Don't off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm less familiar with hyssop, to be honest, but it is in the mint family. It's very aromatic. I know it can be used culinarily as well, but this is what the seed looks like, right? And so with a lot of dry seed heads like this, you can do just this exact technique. Go out in your garden and see. So another example, I'll just show one more example of what that kind of looks like is like with a marigold or cempasúchil. These are really beautiful flowers, also used for tea, for ancestor honoring. So the word cempasúchil means ancestor flower in Nahua, which is the indigenous language of parts of Mexico. And so when it's dry like this, you can just break it open and kind of like the same thing where we just like, and so the seeds are actually these little black, this is the seed here. Each one of these is a seed. And so with any dry seed head like this, you can kind of do the same technique. You just kind of break it open and lightly winnow it in your hand or in a tray and collect the seed like that. And these seeds, when they're dry like this, are totally viable and ready to be saved in an envelope or in some kind of dry, cool place.
Okay.
And so that's with sort of dry seed heads and also dried pods. You really want them to be super dry. The plant's going to start to senesce or die back, and they'll leave these dried seed pods that you can winnow, and the seeds are really ready to go in that stage. Now with fruits, it's a little different. Like if you were going to save seeds from like a pumpkin or a tomato or a pepper, right? In that case, you're going to have to actually, and we could do this if you want to. You've maybe seen this you maybe know more of this process. It's maybe more obvious because the seeds are right there and visible in the fruit. But in that case, then you're going to separate the seed from any of the sort of, material inside the fruit. If it's a tomato or a pumpkin, you're gonna separate that. Often we soak them in water. If it's really wet or moist, you're gonna soak it in water, and you actually can leave it for a couple of days to ferment. With tomato seeds, for example, and then just using like a strainer, like a pasta strainer or whatever. And you can do that for any kinds of fruits, where you just wash them in a strainer and separate the seed from whatever kind of pulp or like wet material there is inside the fruit. And then you can just, once they're clean, you can lay them on a paper towel to dry for a few days, and then those are ready to save. So there's kind of those different processes from seed saving. And it's a whole world, but this is kind of like overarching thing for me on the land or in the garden. People want to tell you that there's you need a lot of special knowledge to do these kinds of things. Oh, well, you got to get the timing right, and you got to make sure this and that. And I kind of like to take the opposite approach, which is just try it. And that's the best way to learn. There's no really right or wrong way. There's better and worse ways sometimes, but I think that one of the best ways we can learn is just by trying things out. And so just I would encourage you all to just try and save the seed from something, and then try and plant it out in your garden. And not getting too bogged down in a lot of the advice that people offer of like, oh, well, you got to get this exactly right or that right. And I think a lot of that is sort of gatekeeps us from really from doing this kind of work. So yeah, that was a little bit about seed saving.
Yeah. What about flowers? Is it the same?
So with the flowers like this, so these are zinnias. These are going to be really similar to the other dried flower heads, where once they're dry, like this one here is a good example. So see how dead and dry this one is. We also have garlic chives. So this is like a really good time for seed saving. Most of the plants in the garden a lot of them are producing seed. So this is what allium seeds look like. So onions, chives, and you see those black seeds, those black things inside the seed head? Those are the seeds. So those are, so if you just like kind of just tap that on your hand, are you seeing those seeds come out?
Not yet.
And then these are zinnias. So I'm just doing the same thing, right? Just breaking up this seed head. And actually, I mean, there's so much seed in here. So there's just a mix of chaff and seed in here. But the seed...
it's like being in Bible study. The wheat and the chaff.
Yeah, I know, right? So those are what the seeds look
And
like.
these are winnowing.
I mean, it's... Well, and that's the thing, right? Is Christ was speaking to the people of... in a language that they would understand.
Wow, different.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right,
know?
right.
He was speaking to he was a political radical, and he was an earth person, and he was speaking to the people of the countryside, and the language that they spoke was the language of the land.
Mm-hmm.
So when he said, oh, if the seeds fall on good soil, if they fall in the path, if they fall in the bramble, like that was a metaphor and a language that they would have understood, that would have spoken to their heart. And I think that's why so much of, and a lot of that has gotten lost in modern, like, Bible study or Christian study, I think, of like the earth-based and sort of politically radical nature of earth stewardship against, empire, really, which is what Christ was up against. So it's a really anyway, yeah, thanks for bringing that in, Deacon. I think that's a really great point. So anyway, it's a little bit about seed saving. Yeah, and again, just like, we can even, like the tobacco, there's also some dried seed heads over there. And so it's really, you start to tune in and you're like, oh, there's seeds everywhere. And so these were the zinnias. Those beautiful, well, they're a little bit sad now, but they were really beautiful, those pink flowers. And so these are the seeds from those. And again, I just broke up the seed head and there's the seed right there. So there's like, dozens and dozens of seeds just in one seed head.
Wow. Yes.
And this is the chaff here, and then you can kind of start to either separate this out. There's ways you can kind of even just lightly winnow, just like in your hand, or get like a bowl or like a big salad bowl, and you can use your breath and just or the wind and just kind of gather seed like that. So again, just trying things out.
Question. How much of the harvest should be for seed, and how much of the harvest should be for like produce to sell or eating?
Yeah, that depends on the crop and depends on your purposes and what you want.
Okay.
There's no one way. There's no one way to do it. It really depends on the crop. For example, like a cabbage. Let's take a cabbage, for example. If you grow a cabbage, you're not going to get any seed from a cabbage. Because a cabbage actually has to go over 2 years. So at first it forms that really dense, over the first year it'll grow that really dense head of cabbage, and then over the second year it opens into this giant flower and produces seed. But if you harvest that cabbage head, you're not going to get any seed from a cabbage, right?
Okay.
Or a broccoli. Whereas, for example, with collard greens, you could just harvest your collard greens all season long, and then it'll send out a flower, and you can keep on harvesting up until the day it produces seed, and you can get both a full collard crop and seed.
Okay.
And then let's see, so those are kind of brassica examples. And then there's something like a bean where the seed is the harvest. So you can go all the way from fully producing it for veggie, for food, or fully the seed is the food.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of can go both ways.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, any other thoughts or curiosities or
I would also just add about that, like if you had a whole row of kale or lettuce or something, and you want to have seed for next year, but you're also growing it for produce, you can harvest most of it because each plant has, hundreds or thousands of seeds, right? So it can really be like mostly, for the ones that you have to if you're going to harvest them, you don't get the seeds. Harvesting most of them and just leaving like one or two, you'll have abundant seeds.
Oh wow. Okay.
Is something I think about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was like an exact number, like 10%.
Right.
Oh, yeah. It really depends on the crop and what you're growing for. I guess the one last thing we didn't talk about was there's one other kind of sneaky type of seed. So we talked about, well, I didn't go super in depth with the seed thing. I mean, there's different ways that seed crops are pollinated, right? There's wind pollinated, insect pollinated, and self-pollinated. So there's also that aspect. But I guess I just wanted to also bring in one other kind of really beautiful and important idea of a seed, which is you can also have, so those are all forms of sexual reproduction where there's genetic recombination happening, there's pollination happening. But there's another sneaky type of a seed, which is potatoes and other clonal plants. So this is itself also a seed. So people even call these like seed potatoes. So we could plant some potatoes today if we wanted. It's a good time for potatoes. And what I do is just cut up these different nodes. And this is where the potato plant will grow from, right? And this is just just bringing in the complexity of the different types of seeds we have. But this is another kind of seed, if you will, something that you can gather and then plant. And all of the genetic information needed for a potato plant is actually contained in these meristems here in the spuds of the potato.
Is that the seed?
This is the seed. So you just plant that whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, you could, in theory, just cut off like just this part and plant it, but generally it's helpful to plant at least a half or a quarter of the potato. So for this one, I might just cut these into halves or quarters and then plant wherever you see a spud. That is the seed.
Okay.
Wow.
So
Wow.
this is one of those things like right out of the pantry, right? Right out of from the kitchen. You got old potatoes, and you can also do this with sweet potatoes, although that process is a little different. I'm trying to think of other things you can reproduce. You can clone. A lot of alliums, garlic you can do. So garlic cloves, you just plant them right in the ground. You'll get a garlic plant. Okay. So there's a lot of different seeds that are also clonal, if you will. Asexual reproduction as opposed to sexual reproduction in the seeds. So that was kind of a lot. But yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
So I tried to do the same thing at home. At my dad's place in San Jose, and we took, a bunch of potatoes this size. It might have been red potatoes even, and we planted them in like a 2x3 planter, and I think we watered it occasionally and we let it grow, and finally when we saw it starting to wilt, I don't know if it was premature, but we uprooted them. Instead of getting that size, we got a bunch of small baby sizes.
It may have been a little premature.
Okay.
Yeah. And potatoes can be, that can happen. So there's a couple of different ways to get higher yields off of a potato. One thing you can do is you can mound them. So for example, if you plant the potato and it sprouts and maybe the plant's this tall.
Uh-huh.
As it grows, you can actually bury it again.
Oh, okay.
And then it'll grow, and then you bury it again. And from each of those, as you bury it, it'll send out new shoots and produce more potatoes. And then generally with a potato, you want it to go to flower
Okay.
before you try and harvest it. So if you're getting it growing and then it dies back without flowering, maybe there was, maybe too much water, too little water, not enough nutrition, not enough space. It could have been a number of different things.
Got it.
It could have been that you planted the potatoes rather shallowly,
Okay.
and potatoes tend to want to be buried pretty deep. So that's why you plant it, it grows, and then as it grows, you bury it, and then it grows more and you bury it, and so you mound it up.
Oh, gotcha.
And then that kind of helps it both literally produce more shoots for the tuber, for more tubers, more potatoes, but it also helps the plant reach maturity better and produce flowers. And once it flowers and dies back, then generally you'll have bigger
That's
potatoes.
when to do it. Okay.
But I'm not sure, without knowing the details of where you were growing, it's hard to know, but it sounds like you harvested it maybe a little early, or maybe it didn't
Yeah.
have enough space.
And I was there periodically, so
Yeah. It's a challenge.
I don't know when it was watered exactly.
Totally. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
that's a good story though,
Yeah,
of
thanks.
like some of the different, growing is a dynamic
funny.
and ongoing relationship,
Yeah.
which makes me think maybe we should transition to like doing some work in the garden. Some cover cropping. We can do some, I heard Deacon say, let's grow beets. So we could do a beet bed, which would be fun. And yeah, maybe that's, we took out most of the things that were the summer plants this morning, kind of just getting things ready for winter. And it might be nice to, we'll see what Abby's probably gonna bring something from inside, maybe some fertilizer or some